Ho, 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 ho. Well, here we are again. Another holiday season, another Christmas, and I'm sporting my holiday hat. Got my beautiful fire going on in the background. Hey, you know what? If you don't know who I am, my name is John Solano. I have been a counselor for a lot of years, over 30 years, in a lot of different, wearing a lot of different hats, speaking about hats today. And I'm wearing my Christmas hat, and that means I am going to do one of my Christmas videos. Now, if you've been to my YouTube channel before, you've seen me hopefully in a video called The Case for Santa. Okay, I wanted to redo that one today, maybe make it a little bit shorter, get to the point. All right. But let me do that. But one of the issues that if you've again been looking at my videos, that I've been researching, tracking for a long time, is this inflated sense of entitlement and indulgence that has permeated every facet of our society. I was a family counselor for 11 years, and believe me, I've heard many parents lament about their kids having an inflated sense of entitlement and indulgence. I think it's not only parents that have noticed that, but certainly researchers have as well. And there's lots and lots of videos if you want to ever Google that or go to YouTube. There's some very respected research on there noting just that, what we've noted. But here's the deal. This inflated sense of entitlement and indulgence, people have to understand that that's deeply embedded in the human psyche. And that is why we often use different stories and metaphors to describe it, such as the little devil and the little angel on our shoulders. Or really, this whole holiday season is about that. It's about coming to terms with really who we are as human beings. A lot of people don't want to embrace that, I guess you could say. Folks are really kind of more into the cliche of saying, none of us are perfect. I'm not a perfect person, etc. But the real fact of the matter is that as human beings, and as we look at the human condition, we're often not acting at our best. And that's why we admire people who have integrity. That's why we are very attracted to people who have integrity. That's why we ourselves want to be people of integrity. And, we aspire to what people sometimes call our best self. That being said, we aspire to it because there's another part of us that is often naughty, if you will. And so again, I'm not going to go a lot into this, but I've done my share of research, and I hope you will take the time to do some research as well into different traditional stories that exist, around this time of year and other times. And so what is the case for Santa? Well, one of the things that is probably all too common, if you will, and you've probably experienced like I did, is there was a point in your life where you believed in Santa Claus. And then there were some older kids who kind of burst your bubble. And maybe you had a brother or sister who just couldn't wait to tell you, or a cousin couldn't wait to tell you that there was no Santa, or that Santa didn't exist. And, and the adults tried to keep them at bay, tried to stop them from saying that to you, but eventually it was said. And there's kind of this letdown, if you will, when you hear that kind of thing. But there's also kind of a sense of kind of relief in a certain way, or a sense of accomplishment on the people who tell you such a thing, that there is no Santa Claus. It's almost like, it's interesting, the adults want to maintain it. So what we could say is that mature mind understands the usefulness of Santa Claus and the story of Santa Claus and the Christmas story. But those who are immature can't wait to try to disturb that story, to thwart that story or the spirit of what's trying to occur. Now, psychologically speaking, again, like I said, I've been in this field a long time. I've studied many things psychologically and theologically and mythologically and other things. And so, when we look at this tidal wave of inflated sense of entitlement and indulgence that's coming our way. What is really caused that? Well, in my clinical experience, what I suggest it is that a lot of these traditional mythological old stories carried some power and some weight, but we live in a time where people have really worked hard to discount what I call the wisdom teachings. So a lot of these stories are really wisdom teachings, and they're very useful. Well, what is Santa Claus useful for? Well, let me sing you a little song here, or go through the words. You know, what is it? You better not pout, you better not cry, you better not, you know, or I'm telling you why. Why is that? Because Santa Claus is coming to town. He sees you when you're sleeping. He knows when you're awake. He knows if you've been bad or good. So be good for goodness sake. Hey, you know, what is that story actually saying? It's kind of a scary story when you think about it. You know, it's like there's this entity out there called Santa Claus. And he knows when you're sleeping, and he knows when you're awake, and he knows if you've been bad or good. As a human being, we can't see Santa Claus, but he can see us. So kind of like Santa Claus is all seeing and all knowing. Why is that a powerful archetype? Why is that a powerful force that's very necessary for the human psyche? Well, because the core of the human psyche is infantile. We grow up as infants, start the planet, you know, at the planet as infants, and we need to mature and we need to be disciplined. So what does it mean? It means that the core of the human psyche is what I call narcissistic, egocentric, and grandiose. And one of the ways, probably the primary way we temper, hold in check, and help transform, help mature the immature ego is to introduce it to something bigger than itself, something that it can't control. Now, we know, you know, clinically speaking, and we all know that it's like an immature person can be very arrogant, can be a know-it-all. The immature mind wants to know everything. It wants to be super special. It wants to divide and conquer. It's an ornery little thing. It's the little devil on the shoulder. And we need something to keep that in check. And we need something to temper it. And we need something to transform it, to make it serve something greater than itself. And we used to convey these stories, these mythological, powerful stories, as a part of a moral fabric or a moral container, a container that held in check and tempered that immature part of ourselves. We call it maturing. We call it raising kids up. The way we are made more mature, the way we grow up, is through humility. So we need to position ourselves. We need to stand in the presence of something greater than ourselves. Where over the last 20, 30 years, there's been an aggressive attempt to dismantle, to discredit many of the wisdom teachings that have really been part of the fabric of our communities, of our nation, part of the moral fabric. And that has been under attack. And so what we get when we are involved in dismantling, trying to dismantle that, we can't really dismantle it, but we can kind of rage against it, you know, and you know, try to discard it and things of this nature, but we can't, because we end up hurting ourselves and we end up in trouble. And so when we, you know, we can talk about this kind of tidal wave of narcissism and grandiosity and egocentricity that's kind of permeated our society. But, you know, what we see as a result of that is and this research is already showing this, and we all know it, is an increase also in anxiety, depression, suicide, and addiction. And we see it politically as well. We see it throughout our entire community. We see division, we see strife, you know, we see violence. We just see a fragmented community, a fragmented nation. And we need something to unite us. And these stories and the humility that it generates helps to do that. I've said in my other videos, humility is the great equalizer. Humility is the great equalizer. So as a mature person, we want to be involved in a discipline that creates humility. And as parents, we want to introduce our kids to a discipline. And what is a discipline? It's a body of knowledge. It's a study. And a study of what? Well, that contains a number of these wisdom teachings, just like Santa Claus, right? If you Google the story of Santa Claus, you'll see that it shows up in a lot of different ways in a lot of different traditions and cultures. Another story that I stumbled across that we all probably have some familiarity with, especially around Halloween, is the story of the Boogeyman. The Boogeyman is the same story. It's that shadowy entity that can come upon you if you're not of good character, shall we say. When I did that little bit of research and it showed it coming up in other cultures, it was really a story that was meant to kind of scare, if you will, kids who were acting poorly. All right. So the Boogeyman tends to be attracted to people who are acting poorly, who are being mean, who are cruel, who are arrogant, etc. So there again are other stories that have helped temper that immature ego, shall I say, that help raise us up and keep that contained and help us become mature individuals. So the case for Santa. We need to make sure that Santa remains present, alive and well in our stories for our children. We need to make sure that the Christmas story itself stays present and alive and well in our personal households, in our community, in our traditions. And that will help us get back on track, folks. Lord knows we've been through some real tough times over the last couple of years with COVID, and we've seen our nation and our communities divide and seen increase, as I said, in violence, in rioting and looting, and in anxiety, depression, suicide. We really need to get back on track, really restore health, not only restore it, but increase it, because we really want to hold on tight to something now that can keep our spirits up, keep us healthy psychologically and physically. All right. So get out that, blow the dust off that Christmas Carol book, blow the dust off those things that you probably put away, those traditions, and sit around. You can see I got a fire going here, and just enjoying the season. All right, folks, take care.